Hi, welcome back to Educator.com. Today we're going to finish up our talk about critical reading by getting an understanding of how we can approach the reading passages themselves, how we can actually read through just the passages. Legal disclaimer, test names are the registered trademarks of the respective owners. Said owners are not affiliated with Educator.com. The College Board was not involved in the production of and does not endorse this course. For many students, the hardest part about passage-based reading isn't answering the questions, it's just making sense of the passage in the first place. Either they have difficulty making it all the way through it, or really understanding what's going on, or something else, but it's something about the passage, not really about answering questions about the passage. In this lesson, we'll learn some strategies that'll help us understand the passage, or even if we can't fully understand the passage, at the very least, we'll be at the point where we understand enough to answer the question. So we'll talk about a bunch of different strategies to get us to that point. First, though, you want to stay positive. The SAT is stressful, right? Sometimes stress makes people doubt themselves and your abilities. Don't let the SAT shake you up. Don't let it freak you out if you wind up doing badly on one or two. You can read. You are able to read, and you can do well on this test, and you can do well at lots of things. There's a great quote, if, a little bit overused, maybe or a cliche, that was said by Henry Ford that I really like. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So what does that mean? It means that if you believe that you're going to be able to make it through it and do it, you think that you're going to be able to understand this reading, then you're going to be able to read it. You will be able to make it through it. But if you know that you're not going to be able to, that you know you can't make it through and there's no way you're going to do it, well, then you're never really going to try. And it's the question of whether you try or not that determines how you do, not this can I definitely, can I not. It's not, these things aren't set in stone. It's about putting effort into it, trying, learning, practice. So, think about this with a positive attitude. Go into this trying and, believe that you can, because honestly, you can. I mean, think about it. By this point, you've been working on reading for 10 years, probably way longer, right? So you can make it through reading a page of text. Like, one page of text is nothing for you at this point. Even if it's a little bit hard to understand, that doesn't matter. On the SAT, they're purposely trying to throw you questions and throw you texts that you aren't going to be able to understand perfectly. But that's okay. The questions about that stuff aren't going to be define exactly what every single thing meant. It's going to be understand what this little point meant. And you do that through context clues. So it's okay to not understand every single sentence. The important thing is just that you get the general idea. And that's really not that hard to do. So know that you can do this. You can definitely read this stuff and understand it and get a great score. On the same token, stay positive about the passage, right? You don't want to think that these things are going to be awful and boring, because really, if you think that something is going to be awful and boring and you don't want to do it, it's no surprise when you get to it and it seems awful and boring and you don't want to do it, right? If you're just dragging your heels the entire time to get to it and then you do it, you're going to hate it, and so you're not going to really do a good job because you hated it from the beginning. So give these things a fair shake. It's actually not that bad, these texts. In my opinion, some of them are actually kind of interesting. So if you can convince yourself that what you're reading is interesting, that what you're going into is actually going to be exciting, it's going to be so much easier to understand. It's going to be so much more enjoyable to read. It won't be this awful, hateful thing. Now, some of the texts you might find a little bit boring, but even if that's the case, try to get yourself pumped up for it. Try to be excited about reading this thing. It's not something that you're going to have to ever read again. So just read it this one time, give it a good shot. Try to find some enjoyment in it. Get psyched for this reading. I mean, this is your chance to show the world a skill that you've been practicing since you were in kindergarten. You are really good at reading by this time in your life. And so, you're going to just trounce this thing. You're going to do great. So honestly, if some of the passages seem a little bit boring to you, it's okay, because you're still going to do great. And honestly, some of them are interesting. You'll be able to make it through this, and you actually might find yourself enjoying some of the passages and thinking they're kind of interesting. And the ones that you don't think they're kind of interesting, lie to yourself. Try to make yourself think that you are interested, even if you really aren't. You want to try to get into the text as opposed to just pulling back and not wanting to do it. So what makes reading hard? Why is reading hard sometimes? So, the two main reasons, the two obstacles to reading, the first one's really obvious. It's understanding the text, right? If you don't understand what you're reading, if the words that you're reading don't really make sense, well, it's no surprise that you don't understand the reading, that you can't make it through it. So understanding, that's first and foremost. Second one, though, I'd say is probably about as important and is really connected to understanding. It's focus. If you can't focus on what you're reading, if you can't make yourself stare and read something continuously for a couple minutes at a time, there's no way to make sense of it. Reading text, words, it's about the stringing together of multiple pieces of information, right? One word on its own, I mean, it has a meaning, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't convey that much information. It's because we string them together to a line of pearls into a sentence, and then that line of pearls comes up multiple times, and we make multiple sentences, and multiple sentences makes a paragraph, and multiple paragraphs makes an argument. So you want to be able to focus on reading the whole thing. If all you can do is one pearl at a time, then you're missing out on a huge amount of information. You want to be able to focus on the whole thing, keep your focus, and not drift off. I mean, how many times have you been reading a book? I'm sure this has happened to everyone. You've been reading something, and you're reading it, and you read for 5 minutes, and then you stop and you think, what did I just read? And you realize you have no idea what you were just reading. You were thinking about something else. You were paying attention to something else going on. You were doing something else while you're sort of going through the motions of reading, but because something else was in your brain, nothing stuck. So you have to be able to keep up this thing where what you're paying attention to, what you're doing is what you're actually paying attention to. That's really important. So let's explore some strategies so you can actually, make sense of the text and keep focused while you read. So let's get some strategies that will solve both our understanding and focus problems for us.